fight for higher wages across the country and support our neighbors however we can. You are an individual, but you're also a member of one of two classes, either the working class or the capitalist class. If you do not own the means by which capital is produced, a factory, an office building, a block of apartments, a large company, you are a member of the working class. And that means your fight is the same as the people at risk of eviction, or who make $7.25 an hour, or who can't afford their medical bills. Only by acting in solidarity with your class can you make a significant impact. If you do own the means of production, if you have wealth at your disposal, we need you too. We wouldn't have had Marx without Engels. Donate to mutual aid funds. Buy and distribute copies of socialist books. That the people putting in bids at $60, $80, $100,000 over asking price are not your average person. They're typically the ultra-wealthy, usually through investment firms or other real estate poaching groups. Let's take Charles Koch as an example. One of the billionaire Koch brothers, Charles has donated millions of dollars to 3 conservative organizations spearheading the push to eliminate COVID eviction protections. This alone would be reprehensible. But since the beginning of the pandemic, he's also been heavily investing in real estate, snatching up homes left and right to add to his massive portfolio of assets, among them the homes of the evicted and desperate. In April 2020, he dumped $200 million into Amherst Holdings, a company which brags it has acquired over 30,000 homes since 2012.
Welcome. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Leon Vlog. I'm your host, John Tell, E. Toland, of course. And tonight I want to talk about a number of things, kind of how they tie in from my experience, give you some stories and backstory of, things that I've been through, how it relates to the way that I view this system and the issues that we have concerning homelessness and houselessness. So I don't know what it's like in your town or city, but where I am, in the clip that I showed you, it's very clear and evident here. We can see it. It's clear as day that investors are buying up property left and right. Landlords are selling. Other landlords are buying it up, fixing it up, flipping it, selling it to investors. Rich, wealthy people are moving in. And it's just this, to me, downward spiral. But I've always been privy to this lifestyle. I've dealt with it for a number of years. And so I've been born and raised in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania dude here. I can't get enough of it. Despite all of its shortcomings, I still love the state. So I was born in Southeast Pennsylvania. When I was younger, I moved to Northeast Pennsylvania. And that is where a lot of the hardships and woes and trials and tribulations that I encountered was located. My very first time experiencing what I would deem homelessness was pretty much out of high school. And why I say this is when you say homelessness, it means without a home. Having a house or shelter and a home are two different things. And there's a lot of people that do not have a home, let alone shelter at all. But that's a whole nother topic, and I'll get to that in a moment. But there's a whole population of people that couch surf or go from place to place because they cannot afford to have actual long-term or even more so longer temporary housing. So they go from place to place. There are people who choose to do that, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But for majority of people, they do, want to stay somewhere and want to have somewhere that they call home. And clearly, home is, as they say, home is where the heart is, right? Home's supposed to be where the heart is. And I think here in America, I mean, we know that there's a crisis. We know there's a housing crisis. And this is something that's always been here, I think, in the shadows in some places. So they weren't too up in arms about it. But when COVID hit, thrusted the problems that we have in our societies out into the open for white people to see. And so for me, 2000s, 2010s, growing up, I I struggled with finding my own housing, let alone a home. So I bounced from place to place, not having anything really stable but a job. That was the only stable and constant I had was a job. And you know how we feel about jobs here on the Leon block. It's one thing to live in your purpose and be fulfilled. It's another to simply just have a job. And as we know, a job and a career are two different things. And I think when you have a career and you're living in your purpose, that's amazing. And it's combining the two. And I don't have an issue with that. The issue is when you're striving to appease a system that is not returning you, it's not filling up your cup as you're feeding that system. So what is the point? Well, we all see so many people fall through the cracks of the system, right? And end up on the street for a number of reasons, or end up needing to move in somebody else's house for a number of reasons. And a lot of times people shame them, and then the stigma and the shame that comes with being shamed for that person themselves makes it even harder and more difficult to get out of that situation, as far as their energy, as far as their motivation goes, as far as the encouragement from surrounding people in that immediate environment. All those things can have an effect on how that person takes it. Then you factor in uh like mental health and addiction, and how those factor into creating that further downward spiral. And then you factor in criminalization on top of it. You're cattling people into a certain area, and this is creating a never ending revolving door that we're only going to see possibly be exasperated more and more and more with the shrinking middle class, and then pushing to just eliminate the middle class altogether and eliminate home ownership for everyone except for rich, wealthy people. But we'll see. So growing up in my 20s, I did a lot of things to survive, and life is a very fickle, interesting thing, also very beautiful. And if you pay attention well enough, you will notice all of the I'm sorry that if you notice all of the intricacies and ways, twists, turns your life is taking, and be very conscious of it, um, it I think can be very rewarding. Um, Even pushing through the hard, difficult things and hurt and pain and grief and things like that at times. But if you're under stress of not having a grounding space, it's very difficult to do any of that stuff, right? And I think that's part of the bigger um picture that I'm trying to paint here, because a lot of us, many people cannot keep up with this capitalism and this consumption here in America, and most people are already running on empty, which can create a disconnection because you continue to run on empty, which creates dissociation or brain fog. And all these different realities that we have within this reality is ridiculous. Our media plays into that. We know that. So I did a lot of things to survive, to feed my empty pockets. And there were times I ended up on the street because of it. And there are a lot of people in similar situations. Now, for me, and I want to touch on this really quick, like it was, I really, I guess I don't really know how I kind of exactly fell into this, but I did partake in, I was a sex worker for several years. And during that time, I bounced around a lot. And this is not unique to me. This is something that many other people, especially queer black people, especially transgender black people, experience and go through as a means to survive. And it's important that people know that, not stigmatize it, not feed that negative energy into it, and first and foremost try to understand where one comes from with it and what they might have to endure, and like what they might have to endure and what they might hold inside of them and harbor, and how that can feed into addictions and mental health and homelessness. And again, I keep saying homelessness because you can still be moving from place to place and sleeping on someone's couch or have a room in someone's house. You don't have a home. And when you're lost, even mentally, you really don't have a home, even if you have a nice roof over your head. That is something I think we all as Americans are facing in some sense of another, even if we have big, lavish houses. So there was this one time I was really struggling really bad. I did have a car, so there were times I slept in my car, but I would go from place to place and sleep on different people's couches and floors and things like that. And I came across this one guy who wasn't a customer, but he was a so-called friend that was trying to help me out, but really just wanted favors himself, if you know what I mean. And there was some eerie, funky things about him that I picked up on, but I wasn't as in tune with myself and intuitive as I am now about people and things of this nature. And he was clearly using me. Obviously, I was using him for something too, so I can't put all the blame on him. But that person had energy that other people feel as though contributed to me having addiction issues and leading to like a near death experience. And the addiction wasn't anything, it was serious, don't get me wrong, but it was the only time I was ever addicted to a substance, and it was, that's not true, coffee. But I was popping Xanax bars and selling them when I was working in the food industry. What the hell is wrong with my speaker? Okay. And so I was going through some rough stuff, but it wasn't that rough. So I can get where this guy thinks that this person, energy wise, had something to do with it. I really don't know. I really don't know. And it's not something I'm going to dwell on. What I do want to focus on is the fact that that time was a really interesting time. I had broke up with me and ex-boyfriend had broke up, and it was a time period where we had to go our separate ways. We knew it was time, and that's just what it was, but it still nonetheless hurt, you know. And I think my way of coping with that hurt was to sell and pop pills, and I was also making an excuse to survive. I was still tricking as well, and just kind of numb and floating, right? And so I was working. I did a double, and I had popped two Xanax bars while working the shift. I ran the shift. I was a manager. Don't remember the shift. I shit you not. But that's what happens when you pop Xanax bars. For those who don't know, it's like I don't know. I wouldn't say like it's a downer. It kind of is. It makes you really numb. It can make you really tired, and when you kind of fight it, it you kind of fade in and out of consciousness. Like you're just a zombie. Like you're just there. You're just existing, but you're not really conscious, right? And so at that time, I guess it felt great. It felt great to disassociate. It felt great to just not be a part of society for a moment, even if like momentarily, mentally, you know? And for me, I think it served its purpose at that time because I really do believe in the whole everything happens for a reason shit. So I, as usual, like it was fast food. So I would smoke blunts on the shift. I smoked a few blunts, popped two bars, popped another bar before I left, went to a friend's house, smoked two blunts, and then I proceeded to drive on the highway. I had just moved from Wilkes-Barre to Scranton. I proceeded to drive on the highway home. And I was nodding out then, right? Well, the universe has its way with you. Oh my goodness. So I was driving like 80 miles an hour. I fell asleep at the wheel. The rumble strips did not wake me. The roadwork sign woke me. And I remember this so vividly. It was sunset. And when I came to, like it was a little darker. My car, I cut the wheel when I came to, like, well, when I woke up from hitting the roadwork sign. And I clipped the wheel like really fast because I was so, it stunned me that my car flipped about 3 to 5 times and went sideways into the ditch between the north and southbound lanes. And I must have passed out somewhere along that time because when I came to, the car was on its side and I was still in my seatbelt. The car was still on, still moving. And I just knew I had to get out of there. And I felt my friend with me, my friend that had just passed away. And I swear to the universe till this day, like I know that that was him with me that guided me out of that car. And I got out the car. I unbuckled the seatbelt, fell to the floor. And as I went to go like reach up, that's when I felt like I felt his presence because I don't know what got me up and out that car, but the strength got me up and out that car. And I just fell to the ground. I tried to get up and I couldn't. My legs just wouldn't move. I guess my legs were just in shock. So I just waved my hands up in the air, hoping that someone could see me. And I was facing the northbound lanes. Well, someone from the southbound lanes saw the whole thing, saw me, came and swooped me up. It was a couple, and I have glasses, so I couldn't see a thing. I'm blind, y'all. And I don't know who they were. I can't thank them. I can't thank them enough. But they moved me from the car. All of my important or what I deemed important things at the time, like my pills, money, marijuana, that kind of stuff was intact in the middle of the car. My glasses, phone, tablet, everything was perfectly intact. And I walked away with just some stitches on my head and some bruises. I should have been dead. And I definitely should have been dead. And my seatbelt saved my life. It really did. And so during that time, it was a really huge learning experience that really humbled me and got me to look at life in a different way. I did not take any other, like, I didn't partake in those kind of drugs ever again, and I uh didn't quit like abruptly. That was the last time with that. I think I actually just gave the pills away. I didn't even sell them. And during that time, uh after that, I think I fell back into sex work for a little. I did have a stable place for a little, and then I ended up back on the street. Uh, some nights I slept, under bridges. Sometimes I was in people's houses. The one thing I would say is that I was always constantly working. I had a job working at Dunkin' Donuts at that time, and I was in Scranton. It was shortly after the accident, and it was a rough time for me. I worked my ass off just to survive. My tips were what allowed me to eat every day. That During that time I experienced a lot of people and came across a lot of people from all walks of life. Prior to that, I had been homeless and been without a house as well, but I didn't experience that level of a low, that level of a hopelessness, and I had to keep a positive attitude, and that's what kept me through. And also finding and gravitating towards genuine people that were willing to help me really helped. Not everyone has that. Not everyone has that. And for a lot of judgmental people in this country, they can't grasp that until it happens to them. The thing is, from watching that video, can't you see that we're all a step away from that exact same thing? There's not going to be a middle class. They don't want the middle class, and they're trying to persuade millennials to get to continue to fucking rent. They don't want us owning home. They don't want us owning property. And it's not like, owning a home technically means you have that property anyway, considering eminent domain and all. But I digress. That's a different thing. So the time in Scranton ended up being a really interesting time. I met a lot of great connections with a lot of great people, but it was a time of great despair. Even prior to Scranton, I bounced around a lot, and it was a time of great despair. It was also a time of great learning. I realized that I was in despair because I was feeding other people and not feeding myself. And I mean, that happens with sex work if you're not uh, very conscious of what you're doing and why and all of that stuff. And part of me didn't understand why. I think the subconscious was doing things that, again, I did certain things I needed to do so that I could survive. But at the same time, I also, it, with and that's a whole nother topic, but that I will discuss with a guest. But it's part of the culture, and it's sad to say that, but it it actually is true. When you come from not even just red line communities, but when you're living in the suburbs, you're living around diverse areas or even just white areas, and people are really like people really only want you because they think you got a big black dick, as they say BBC, and they just want you for sex. They don't want you for a relationship. They can't even fathom being with you in a relationship. You're literally, your color is a fetish for them. And you learn to take advantage of that. You learn to use that as a means to survive. And I've come across, it's not even just other gay men or other bisexual men that do this. There's straight men that do this so that they can survive. There's men that have come out of prison and feel as though they can deal with getting their dick sucked or fucking an old white man for a couple $100 or even like $50. But I've seen high paying ones for thousands of dollars getting, money from white men. So like my point is that in black culture in general, because it's not just an black LGBT thing that you see with sex work, you see it with DL brothers too. Like you can go on any of those gay dating apps now and see tons of DL brothers that will be, what do they say, gay for pay. And people will be like, oh, that's sad, that's crazy, that's fucked up. But they're not thinking about why that is, where it's coming from, why people feel the need or be pushed to that point to have to feel the need to do that, right? No one wants to talk about that though. No one wants to talk about the mental implications that come with that, the stigmatizations, whatever that you want to, that come with that are associated with it. The damage, not only to those people, but to the community, LGBTQ community as a whole as well. The damage that black trans lives go through when it comes to this, because they're fetishized by white men, they're fetishized by straight black men. But then on the streets, it's a completely different thing. You don't even acknowledge these folks. There's a lot of issues that are at play. There's a lot of issues that that surround sex work in the LGBT community concerning black people and people of color. And you can tie prison into that too. Uh, the culture of the things that may happen in prison, because it doesn't happen everywhere or to everyone, but there are some when they get out. I've come across some, and it's very disheartening and very frustrating for me because I want more for these brothers. And it's like, if you're not like, if this is not who you are, you're not attracted to dudes, like, it's very damaging for someone that is genuinely looking for love and ends up paying for sex from someone that really is just trying to get by themselves. And they can't even get love because they're worried about surviving. They can't even fathom or think about it. And that's what I think is sad. People are so quick to judge instead of really thinking about the root and the cause of where things are coming from, right? For me, I got to a point where I was like, I'm tired of, it made me cringe. It still, and now it makes me really cringe when I see or hear BBC. Just don't. As soon as I hear that, I don't even acknowledge that person. And in my head, I equate it to covert racist at this point. And everyone goes, I have my preferences. No, you're prejudiced. Point blank, period. And I have no time for it. I love myself. I have much more respect for myself than to let someone blatantly reduce me to a couple minutes for a couple bucks. Like, it's that is really disheartening when I would see, not that it's any better, but other gay guys, it was kind of like expected. But then when I would see straight guys do it, it was like, for me personally, like, other gay guys would get really pissed off and offended, or like, you're in my space kind of thing. Other gay guys would be really pissed off about it because, like, they're looking for love, that kind of thing. But for me, I was just really disheartened because you have a whole other sector of people, not LGBT but straight, that are getting sucked into this thing too, and like literally like throwing themselves up for auction as well, just so that they can get a couple bucks. And to me, it's still slavery in some sense. And just because you're an old white gay man doesn't mean that you're not exempt from being racist and misogynistic and just an all right bigot in your own way. And these motherfuckers will be the first ones to claim that they're Democrat and they're pro Biden and they're pro Black Lives Matter. No, you ain't. When you sucking dick and getting fucked on the weekend by niggas that ain't even really trying to be with you, they just trying to feed their baby mamas, like, or stay out of jail, really, and are honestly, and like, not for nothing, they're probably repulsed. And that's the sad part, because the people that are just looking for that stimulation really just want that love. They don't care necessarily about the physical connection, but that physicality of it is the only thing that's keeping them going. And it's a cycle of just hurt and pain, and no one's at a high frequency. Not everyone is. And in the LGBT community, with the demographics that I was just speaking of, there's a lot of discord and not enough meditation, not enough black and brown people embracing their ancestral roots, getting back to nature, uh, cleansing themselves, and really trying to find a medium between where they came from, like in a reference to describing who they are and who they are in this current moment, to where they're trying to get to, acknowledging where they are and what's going on in the world and the part that they play in it. Because understanding that will understand, like, why are you a sex worker? Do you want love? Um, do you like all kinds of men, or do you feel only relegated to dating black men because nobody else makes you feel worthy of who you are as a being? They just want you for your color, um, for sex. And not everyone feels that way, but a lot of people that are affected by the ills of this system and the racism, somebody out there will agree on some level. And again, these people are just searching for home. They're searching for an outlet of connection. And it's important that we pay attention to this. It's important that we continue to have the conversations about sex work, about homelessness. Fuck houselessness. Fuck shelter. Homelessness. Because there are far more people without a home and everyone's just roaming, lost. That's the problem. That is where we need to get to. And in the videos that I showed, it talks about uniting, it talks about coming together, it talks about existing in a space where we combat that 99%. We need to make sure that we can survive the storms. There's going to be some more storms coming. And if we're united, all classes, all races, united, we really can win. Like, landlords and tenants should be uniting together. Everyone wants to save what they have. And poor people and tenants are not trying to take it from landlords. Landlords really don't want to take it from tenants. They just want their money. And that's understandable. And I mean, I have my bones picked with some, landlords of, in some sense, of the way that it's structured, not the actual landlords, but um, that's a different topic. The whole fact of the matter is, we're both fed the shitty end of the stick and made to be pinned against each other when we're all suffering. We're all suffering, and there are so many people that are so without, and the people that are close to being without are the first ones to be making fun of the people that they could be put right in that immediate situation the next day. What sense does that make? None at all. So yeah, we have to do better. We will do better. But homelessness is something that is not going away right now, unfortunately. But I think it's important to keep the foot on the gas as far as being aware and everyone doing their own part in a community sense to care for one another. I saw this video the other day with this white Hispanic woman. I forget what town it was. I want to say Phoenix. And she was, and I get part of where she was coming from with this. There was a woman who was a sex worker who had a tent outside of their house, and it was more or less a middle class neighborhood, but it was right by the highway. So when homelessness levels spiked after COVID, during COVID, uh, they started experiencing an influx of homeless people walking through the neighborhood and setting up shop. And so she would have her clients come to the tent, which is not uncommon. And, the homeowners claim, I got kids and da, 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 which I get it. Completely get that. And there's people on all sides of the fence that really have their best interests at heart in the sense of trying to care and help. But at the same time, like, some are doing more damage than good and they don't realize it. That's my opinion. That is my opinion. But this woman reminded me of the same Karens back in the 50s that were like, I don't want crime in my neighborhood. I don't want a black person in my neighborhood. It's not racist. That's just how I feel. That's my preference. Okay. I don't I don't have an issue with people wanting to live amongst, their own kind. I have an issue with people not being kind to everyone, right? You can like and prefer to be around your own kind. I have no issue with that. But when you come in contact with other kind, be kind and try to understand other kind. Like, I don't think it's really a good thing to be around your own kind all the time. And I think when you're around other kind, you should be doing everything you can to understand them so that you're not ignorant to those people when you do encounter them. Because we all do live here together. That's a whole nother topic. So there was this time back at the time when I was working at Dunkin' Donuts in Scranton. And like I told you, during that time period, sometimes I would sleep under bridges, sometimes I would sleep on the biking trail, sometimes I would sleep at friends' houses, sometimes I would sleep in the woods. Uh, and it was it started I went from the winter to the dead of the summer homeless before I moved down to Southeast PA and moved in with my grandparents and really got back on my feet from that point for a while. And I just remember in Scranton riding the bike 4 miles to work sometimes. And actually, I think it was for 2 months before, the last 2 months of me living in Scranton, I found an apartment with a room with another guy that I knew, didn't know very well, went halves on this place, and he ended up being not a he had a horrible negative frequency about him, and it just really affected me really bad. And I had enough. I couldn't be around that. That was actually what led to me just having enough and moving down to Southeast PA with family and being around family and really loving myself and getting back to turning my life around. But during the time of being there at that house, which was not in Scranton, it was outside of Scranton, I biked 4 miles to work and 4 miles back. And like I said, those tips are what fed me because all of my money went to paying rent. It was it was difficult, but at least by that point, I had a roof over my head to have a little bit of, clear space and a clear mind. But I didn't know that the guy had an addiction that he was currently going through and tricking for a drug dealer. That was something that I couldn't condone or tolerate, especially considering I was trying to stay away from people with addictions because I had one at, prior to that the year before, and I was trying to stay away from the tricking lifestyle. And when the drugs really started affecting him, when I noticed patterns and realized who the drug dealer was and that he wasn't his boyfriend, that the pimp wasn't his boyfriend, he, long story short, like he spazzed on me. I had to get the fuck out of there. So I moved down to be around people that I could get myself together and had that time. My grandparents really helped me out. They've always been there for me, which is kind of what made it. I didn't take it hard when my grandfather passed away, but I was extremely thankful for being able to spend the last few years of his life in his presence and being around and be able to come around a lot. And he's the one who had me come back home. Home. My grandparents' house is the one home that I can say I've always had and the one constant I can say I've always had in my life. And it's nice to have a home. It's nothing like having a home. That is a great mental, physical space for me. And there's spiritual ties with the family energy there, the familial energy there. And the it doesn't, it adds to it that the property is beautiful. It's just beautiful, and it's just energy it has. And yeah, I was able to get on my feet. I was able to get a place with someone, and the relationship kind of knocked me back off my feet. And there was a bit of turmoil during that relationship. Not knocking that person. I love them and have great respect for them. At the time, they were in a lot of trauma in their own life. And I was trying to make peace with my trauma, you know what I mean? And trying to make peace with my trauma and dealing with someone else's trauma and taking it on because you're in a relationship wasn't the best. I was dealing with the codependency issues. And so uh money, financial issues, and with that person involved, I ended up getting having to leave. And so abruptly that I couldn't find another place in time. I ended up moving into my car, and periodically I would stay at night at my grandparents' house and stuff when I needed to, but I had a job in Lancaster at that point. So I had to, a lot of times I would just stay in Lancaster. Eventually, I just started sleeping out of my car in Lancaster. I had left a really good paying warehouse job because capitalism, consumption, slave jobs, mental health, burnout, crash, discover that you have all these mental health issues. Yeah, that whole nine. That's what happened. So I ended up taking a low wage paying job that was actually really rewarding. I felt valued, and that was a really happy time in my life despite being homeless. I had a lot of people really there for me. At that point, it was a really kind of like bittersweet point in time in my life. I was learning a lot of things, growing a lot, and just really humbling myself. And energy wise, even despite me being in a physically not so great situation, not having a house and shelter and being houseless, I did still have that home that I could go to periodically and decompress. Not everyone had that. And in the town that I live in, the city that I currently live in, it's visible everywhere that not everybody has that. And it broke my heart because I felt more privileged, even though I didn't even have a house or a home. You know, it's just crazy how America is. And even though I was really fucking broke, I still had an optimistic outlook. I was able to get an apartment. And then COVID hit. I didn't feel safe in the small apartment that I had or with the roommates that I had. And COVID didn't help that. It just made me more nervous. I was going to school at the time when COVID hit, so I dropped out. I couldn't do the remote learning. I will be going back to school, but for now I'm focusing on other things. But I ended up moving out of the city for a little bit to get a peace of mind, and I had an opportunity to go stay with someone. Again, you see a constant here is instability as far as security of a home and a house. My own home, not my grandparents' home, but my own home, my own mental space, my own physical space of a home. I did not have that. I haven't had that until now, but I was going from place to place to place to place, just searching. And for a time, I had made peace with it, like, and just made jokes like I'm a nomad, da da da. Da. But that was my way of making peace with it and trying to cope with it. Everyone has their own ways of coping with it, and for me, it was that. I got to a point where I just said enough is enough, and by all means and any means, I will do everything that I can to maintain this and having a home because I don't ever take it for granted, and you shouldn't either. A lot of people do, and it's unfortunate. I know what it's like to not have anything. I know what it's like to lose everything. Everything. When I'm saying like everything you own and your birth certificate and social security card, ID, like I've lost everything, not just once, not just twice, multiple times. And when I say you can start over, you can start over. You have those foundations. They're always there, they're always within you. And you can use them to get through and deal with the addictions, the mental health, the pain and hurt, the isolation. Seek out people that are good hearted and good spirited people. Do your best, be your best, even when the rest tell you that they think that you're not, just because of the way that you may look, or just because your lack of clothing, or lack of cleanliness, or lack of change, that kind of change, because you want to change, you want to be better, but society makes it hard for you. I'm here, I hear you, and I understand. I know I've been there. It's not easy trying to survive. It's not easy worrying about trying to survive all the time. And when people nitpick and judge when you're just trying to survive and telling you to just be happy and just be and just go do something, how can you when all you're worried about is trying to survive, trying to eat, trying to breathe, trying to sleep, trying to worry about how you're going to get through the next day? But on the bright side, you always have that foundation. So you always have the mental space in your mind to create a mental home, to go to ground yourself, to figure out what you're going to do next. What is your next step? What now? What now? What am I going to do now? And it's funny because I'm learning that right now, but I remember that that's what I did before when I was at the lowest points that I thought I was in of my life. What got me through was saying, what now? And I made constant momentary plans. I set out how I was going to do something by the moment. And that's what got me through, and that's what got me past. I kept saying, what now? What am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? I can't worry about next week. I got to worry about now. Worrying, not worrying, but doing the now got me out of that situation and got me through sooner than I expected because I kept at it. And I'm going to keep at it now, and you will keep at it too. But again, acknowledge where you are, acknowledge the state and crisis that we're in this world, and please do your part to help one another in your community. That's what I'm asking. And like, that is part of the bigger point and picture of this podcast tonight. Yes, we have a housing and a homeless crisis, an issue, but it starts with creating that mental home and that mental space. Once you create that mental home and that mental space together, we can work together, have community, and be free and find that physical home. We're gonna find that physical home, y'all. I believe that. I want you to believe that. But I also want you to take note of the things going on around you. Be kind to those that have addictions. Don't worry about what they're doing with their money that you give up to them so it becomes their money to do with as they wish. Don't judge because they're dealing with their own addictions that they're going to go find meth with their money. So what? Maybe that's what they need for that day to keep them alive. You don't know what they've been through that has put them in that situation. Be kind. Be kind and give them what you have if you can, because sometimes you can't, and that is okay too. You have to preserve yourself. You have to protect your own energy too. That is okay. But also, when you feel in your gut that it is right and you need to give something to that person, do it. If you feel in your gut that you need to give them food, give it to them. If they decline, oh well, you tried. Don't stop trying though. Just be good to one another. Give grace, open space, learn, love, be. What sparked tonight's podcast was someone reached out to me in a situation where her and her boyfriend need a place to stay. They've been in a situation for a while, but have really been self-conscious and prideful and not wanting to reach out to people, embarrassed maybe. I understand. I've been there. I'm not the kind of person to turn someone away. My space is really small. I love my space. It's my home, and I do protect my energy. But also, I want to make sure that those people and that person, because I love and care for them, have somewhere that they can go. And thank goodness we were able to get them. They were able to get somewhere to go, but we were also able to get them resources so that they can find somewhere to go for the future, for the temporary time being. I'm just glad I was able to give them some love and compassion and light energy and motivation to get through the night, and maybe give them some motivation tomorrow to go on with whatever direction they're going. But they have my encouragement always. And so all of that is what sparked this talk tonight. And I came full circle. Let's create our our mental home and see how far we can get with creating not just mental homes, but physical homes for everyone. Live, love, and light, y'all.